So let's talk about the opposite but complementary aspect, I think, of this, which is that even as a hatred for all that Jerusalem gave the world has led today to attacks on the Jewishness of Jerusalem, we also see a remarkable embrace by many believing non-Jews of the Jewishness of Jerusalem. And I wonder if that's do you think that's based on not only the role that the Bible plays in their own lives, but also a sense that in today's age, and in an age where much of the West, as you described, is eating itself and has sought to amputate Jerusalem from its identity, perhaps for these Christians in America and around the world, Jewish Jerusalem stands as a sort of a bulwark or beacon for all that they believe. And that's actually fueling their faith as well as their embrace of Jewish Jerusalem.
I mean, I think that's entirely true. I mean, I speak to religious Christians on an extraordinarily regular basis. I mean, most of the people who work with me and for me and most of my audience, I'm sure, are people who go to church regularly. And when I talk to them, they're folks who believe that Jerusalem and its Jewish identity are the root of the tree. And you can't understand where you are on the tree without having roots that are connected to the ground.
Right.
And so that requires actually looking at Jerusalem in its historic context, recognizing, for example, if you're a Christian, that Jesus was a Jew living a Jewish lifestyle in Jewish Jerusalem. Right? This is something that you're starting to see people really connect with. When I recently was in Israel, I brought my producers, and my producers are walking around Israel. They're going to sites that Jesus walked on, and they're realizing that the roots that people really don't spend a lot of time thinking about go extraordinarily deep. I mean, when you live in the United States, and it's the most prosperous and powerful country in the history of the world, history only goes about 350, 400 years deep here. Right. And the most historic site that you're going to see, you're going to go to Plymouth Rock, and that's a site that's about 400 years old. And then you go to Israel, and probably the newest thing you're seeing is about 400 years old.
Yeah.
Right? If you're walking around in old Jerusalem, every single thing that you are seeing is 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't sink a spade in anywhere in the environs of Jerusalem without digging up a piece of pottery that's 2,000 years old. Yeah. And when you realize that you are not just standing on the shoulders of people who were making policy in 1600, you're standing on the shoulders of those people, and they're standing on shoulders, and you have to go 25 generations deep, 40 generations. When you see that I think changes your perspective on the amount of gratitude you should have toward your own civilization, and also causes you to reinvestigate the roots of the civilization that's brought you the iPhone, for example.
Yeah, 100%. You actually just reminded me of one of my favorite jokes of describing how Americans approach history just because of the newness of their own country, and describes two Americans touring England, I think. Yeah, and they go to Runnymede, and the guide says, it was here at Runnymede that King John was first forced by the nobles to sign the Magna Carta, an essential document of the rights of man. And the Americans ask, when was this document signed? And the guide says 1215. And one of the Americans says to the other, he says, it's 1230 now. If we were here just a little bit sooner, we could have been here for it. So it is, of course, the antiquity of Jerusalem, but also, as you say, the continuity of Jerusalem that is so important for them to experience. And you yourself just went back to Jerusalem. You were just there. And the last time you went was a couple years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, 2019, before COVID.
So before in the before time, in the long ago is when you went. So maybe just speak a little bit about the experience of being back and how that impacted you.
It's an unbelievable thing. And so I think that the most telling experience for me was that I was able to go up on Har Bayit on the Temple Mount on Tisha B'Av. And I've done Tisha B'Av, never in Israel. I've done Tisha B'Av always in the United States. And it's always, to me, I have a very hard time sort of, I would say, generating feeling about things that I haven't personally experienced. I know this is something a lot of people have with regard to prayer, but for me, when you're supposed to be sitting and weeping over the temple, that's a very difficult thing for me, sitting in, for most of my life, Los Angeles, or now sitting in Florida. Right. Being in Jerusalem for Tisha B'Av was such a different thing. And it was a different thing because not only are you looking at the actual stones of the second temple in some cases when you go up on the Temple Mount, so it feels very real. What you realize is that the sort of Jewish idea that Tisha B'Av eventually is going to be a Chag, that eventually it's not going to be a fast day, it's going to be a day of celebration. It feels 5 minutes away. And that's the thing that really is stunning. When Jeremiah talks about how the city is empty and desolate and there's no one here and all of the stones have been uprooted and all of this, and then you go to Jerusalem and it's a city of 1 million people and over 600,000 Jews. And when you walk up onto the Temple Mount, and that day 2,000 Jews went up onto the Temple Mount, it really feels, as I said at the time, this is Rishit Tzmichat Geulatenu, right? This is the first flowering of our redemption. And to not feel that way is nearly impossible in that context. And to walk through Jerusalem is to feel as though you're living in a messianic age. Because the amazing thing about Jerusalem, as you mentioned, is that it's not just that you're walking through antiquity, it's that you walk directly from antiquity, and within one block, you're in modernity. And that's the story of civilization. You're walking directly outside the old city, and you walk directly into Manila, right? You walk from the Jaffa Gate
bridge.
directly into a modern mall.
Just by crossing
with the
the Jaffa Gate, you crossed 2,000 years, basically.
Right, exactly. You're fast forwarding through history, and that street that you crossed is most of Western history.
Right.
And the juxtaposition of the two is a great reminder that one is an outgrowth of the other.